privilege to introduce our speaker for this morning. His bio is in the program, his many accomplishments, that only a few are listed there. Gerald Hector is an amazing man, one whose wisdom, whose strength and integrity shines in all that he does. A person whose counsel that I seek, whose guidance I appreciate, whose honesty, candor, and commitment to excellence is evident. You can tell a lot about a person not by what they do when life is great and seasons are perfect. But in early fall of 2015, as Ithaca College was going through some very difficult times of race relations, his voice rang out throughout campus and the Ithaca community as one of sound judgment, unity, and really challenged not only the Ithaca College community, but the Ithaca community in general to unite around our common humanity. He is an amazing man of God whose prayer life is exemplary and whose family is amazing. And so I hope that you came today to be challenged and to be inspired. That's why I'm here. And I now present our speaker for this morning, Gerald Hector, who is the Vice President of Financial Affairs at Cornell University, and I'm proud to say, a member of the Calvary Baptist Church in Ithaca.
Well, good morning, everyone. Good morning. Pastor Wright, thank you for that wonderful introduction. Every time I'm introduced to speak, I'm always looking around the room asking myself the question, who are they talking about? Not because of what is contained in the biographical sketch, but I often wonder, it must be cool to have two first names. To Ms. Verdier, President of Elmira Corning NAACP chapter, I say to you, thank you for this invitation to speak at this auspicious event. The NAACP has played a pivotal role in the lives of so many people since its inception, and its work is still needed more today than any other time in history. I would like to acknowledge my pastor. Although he introduced me, I still want to acknowledge him because he is a man that works tirelessly in the Southern Tier to bring communities together. I often say he's an old soul in a young body. I would like to also acknowledge my wife, Sharon Kay, who is here with me today, and my three children, Joshua, Timothy, and Kezia in their absence. They are truly my biggest inspiration, and they're the reasons why I do what I do. Well, it's not my intent to be before you too long, but as a seminary student in my last semester of study, who has truly taken the rough side of the mountain to finish this degree, coupled with the fact I'm of the Baptist faith tradition, for the next 4 hours, we will engage in a discussion about how we remain positive in a changing world. After sitting through these 4 hours, you will garner a real-world experience of how to remain positive and uplifted as a speaker goes on for 4 hours, without saying much. If you make it out of this portion of today's breakfast, it will be well worth the ticket price. I'm sure many of you came today to hear theories and strategies around how to remain positive, but I bet you are expecting to have some practice as well. However, after the 4-hour time limit has passed, I will be seeking a security escort to my car. On a more serious note, as I sat and pondered the topic and what I was asked to speak about today, I was both excited and anxious at the same time. The theme for this breakfast, remaining positive in a changing world, is most appropriate. We are at a crossroads in our respective life journeys yet again. In my allotted time today, I will posit two challenges that we confront today that I believe are the causes for us being in a mode of searching our hearts and souls for future direction. These two only scratch the surface, but they are the ones that are front and center in our lives today. The first is globalization. The world is much smaller because of technology. The internet and all forms of social media have replaced the pen pals I had when I was growing up. Commerce and business are increasingly focused more on international trade. We even see it in ministry of missions around the world. We see fervent spirituality taking root in some of the poorer nations of the world. How many of you knew that money does not always equate to authenticity anymore? Globalization swings both ways. And here in the United States, we are seeing where it takes on greater meaning in the sphere of higher education. Listen to these statistics from a recent publication entitled Open Doors 2016 from the Institute of International Education. The top countries with students in the United States are China at 329,000, India at 166,000, Saudi Arabia and South Korea at 61,000. The total number of international students enrolled in the U.S. higher education institution was approximately 1,400,000 in 2015-2016. The total dollar amount of international students contributed to the U.S. economy in 2015-2016 a whopping $32.8 billion. The number of American students studying abroad has increased 3 times over the past 2 decades, with the UK, France, and Spain accounting for the more popular locations. The world is now at our front door. However, some of us are not answering it because we don't know what to say when it is open. I'm not referring to knowing a foreign language, but I'm saying that we're just not familiar with other cultures. The population in the United States was approximately 319 million in 2014. The total number of passports in circulation for United States citizens for that same year, based on the State Department, was 122 million. That represents approximately 38% of the entire population. It might be a stretch for me to extrapolate beyond that, but I will use it for the purposes of an illustration. The world is expanding, and since the United States is still by far the most powerful nation on this earth, people are coming here. We are not, however, going there. Does that render us ignorant of the cultures so that we get our understandings of them through television, the internet, and other programming? If we have never taken the time to travel to other countries and learn their cultures that are not like our own, and now they're coming here, wouldn't that have some fear, stress, and anxiety accompanying it? That means I have to come out of my comfort zone to relate to my fellow man. Am I willing to change? I think we are seeing that answer to that question play out today right before our very eyes. I have a different experience because of where I work daily. I have the luxury of seeing the world right here in upstate New York at the storied Cornell University. Whenever I ride the bus between the main campus and my office, eat in the cafeteria, or attend a sporting event, I'm always in awe of the rich tapestry of cultures that are before me in an interwoven in so many disciplines. I see it in our scholarship, I see it in our academic enrichment, and the collaboration that takes place on so many levels. The globe is truly represented in so many ways. That onus is upon all of us to engage in. This is emboldened even further that is believed by many that by the year 2027 or thereabouts, the minority student will be the majority student on college campuses. The world is changing and getting more international and diverse. So that leads me to my second stressor that I would like to leave you. This stressor is the albatross around our collective necks. It is that thing that will cause us to throw anchors to the past. It is that topic that we will talk about in our homes, but we will never step outside publicly to defend, or worse yet, try to understand it in its proper context. You know what I'm referring to. We're referring to race relations. Race relations not only here in the United States, but now indeed around the world. Given our shrinking proximity to each other because of technology, I remember vividly growing up in Jamaica and hearing my grandmother and others talk about Hurricane Charlie that hit the island in 1951. The way the elders spoke of the storm, I wanted so badly to see one for myself. Well, in 1988, my wish came true with Hurricane Gilbert, a Category 3 storm, no less. It left me wondering what was so fascinating about a hurricane destroying a country. Needless to say, I do not want to see another one. I mentioned the hurricane because it was a seminal event and a disruptor. You will see why in a minute. Fast forward to circa 2012 in Anderton's barbershop in Charlotte, North Carolina. The topic of the day was, do you think we could endure what our ancestors went through? To a person, the response was a resounding no. The rest of the day in the barbershop was a reflection upon the history of race relations in this country and the fact that we never ever want to experience that again. For some of us, it seems that we have stepped into a time warp and landed right back in that time in 2016. The jolts and perceptions and realities associated with that era has rendered not only people of color, but so many more in a state of fear and anxiety. Check out the internet blogs. Check out news sites, especially the comment sections. Check out Facebook and take a snapshot of our reality today. We can clearly see why the source of negativity we are experiencing is both national and international. So how in the midst of all this chaos does one find strength to remain positive? The geopolitical movements are taking place at a dizzying pace where we cannot keep up. It seems that in almost every sphere of our lives today, the pulpit, government, families, and careers has left us with the unqualified leading the unwilling into the unnecessary for no apparent reason. We are anxious and in many instances afraid. The fear of what's next has crippled some of us. The fear of the unknown is making some people physically sick. So what do? In a metaphorical sense, I believe that a coconut tree and standing in line to buy ice during Hurricane Gilbert in 1998 can provide a rubric and a framework around which we can understand what we will do next. How can a coconut tree and standing in line to buy ice help us today with all of what you have just laid out? I'm glad you asked. If you have ever been in a hurricane, there is the first wave, an eye, and the second wave. The second wave makes its appearance in grand fashion. During the eye of Hurricane Gilbert, I had an opportunity to go outside and walk my neighborhood. The devastation was real, and I remembered asking myself, how can we take more of what is yet to come? While walking the community, I noticed a coconut tree that was across the street from my then girlfriend's house. Many people came out and gathered on the corner to swap stories, but I was simply focused on the coconut tree. It did not look perturbed. As a matter of fact, it still had coconuts on it. The owner climbed the tree during the eye because he feared that they would become projectiles in the second wave. While cutting down the coconuts, the second wave arrived. He removed some, but not all. But I could have cared less. I was still fixated on the tree. The wind started to blow yet again, and I saw something that I have tried to carry with me for the rest of my life. The tree bent, but it did not break. I have heard preachers create sermons around that theme, but today I want to share 3 characteristics of that coconut tree that I believe will help us today. Coupling those characteristics with my standing in line for ice rounds out the theories and strategies we need to employ to remain positive today. The first characteristic was obvious. The winds blew very hard, but the roots never gave way. They were anchored in what nourished them. In the midst of the chaos, the roots held firm. The roots were unwavering. Fast forward immediately after the hurricane. There I was standing in line to buy ice with my father. We needed ice because refrigeration was non-existent in some households. Standing in the line, I was struck by what I saw. It was not the length of the line, and trust me, it was long, but more so it was who was in the line. People from every color, nationality, socioeconomic class, and creed were standing in the line to get ice. How could that be? Gilbert, the hurricane, Gilbert, the storm, became the great equalizer for us all. There was no rich, there was no poor in that moment. We were all people who all had a need. What was on display in that moment was the brilliance of the human spirit. We were not in the classifications that society placed us in, but we were African, we were Asian, we were Caucasian, we were East Indian, and others. The motto of Jamaica was in full flight in that moment, out of many, one people. If you have not caught on yet, our roots, my friends, are found in our common humanity and is made more complete as we strive to live together with a singular purpose. That makes me wonder today, when will we not wait for a storm to showcase our strength through our humanity? What if we were able to use these current storms of anxiety, fear, xenophobia, racism, bigotry, misogyny, and all the other isms of the world today to jumpstart a coming together? Would we be able to see that all we want are the same things and to accomplish such for our families? We can get more done together than rather than being apart. Would we be able to understand that we need to exercise empathy and understanding when one of us is in need, even if that need is as a result of past injustices? How do we sit in our common humanity to rectify those differences? My friends, we cannot fix what we won't face. And I don't know about you, but this time warp that some see is not really a time warp. It has been here all the time. We just needed a storm to expose it and to show us that we have not gone as far as we thought on this issue of race. There is a quote that is attributed to Mr. Warren Buffett that says, "When the tide goes out, we find out who was swimming naked." This tide is not out. And for some of us, we need to go visit Dick's. The second characteristic of the coconut tree points out that its strength is in its core. Being married to a yoga instructor myself, I'm now more aware of my core than ever before. I pause here for a moment to solicit your prayers. Myself and my children are the ones who the new routines are trying on first. My friends, as the storm winds blew, the roots held the tree in place, but its core required both strength and flexibility. If the tree was simply a rigid pole, the wind would probably snap it. I'm not an engineer, so that is pure speculation on my part, but as I watched the tree, the sway in it, as the wind blew, it was all absorbed by the core. That core, in my estimation, is what allowed it to bend against negative forces and not break. I know that there might be some Corning engineers in the audience, but please remember this, it's illustrative. When the storm was over, it stood there, this tree, pretty much unperturbed. Returning to my newly found friends in the line for ice, the same characteristic was exhibited. Our common humanity is one thing, but our core responsibilities to our fellow man and our sensibilities to this world are going to be challenged in a time of storm. There were folks who showed up without tarps or igloos, but still wanted to get ice. Under normal circumstances, everyone would have simply minded their own business, showed them a little empathy, that they came unprepared, and politely send them to the back of the line. In this instance, a crisis not only brings out our common humanity, it forces us to strengthen other character traits like trust, care, and camaraderie. Those people who came unprepared were assisted. Complete strangers shared their igloos, extra tarps, and their vehicles. Remember now that everyone from every socioeconomic class was standing in line. Under normal circumstances, the rich people would not want the poor people to know where they lived up in the hills. And they would have no reason to go into certain ghetto communities regardless of the time of day. This was no ordinary time. There was a pressing need. Our brothers and sisters were in dire straits, and people had the capacity to help, so they helped. We became flexible and strong that day, like the core of the coconut tree. This point was brought home for me in crystal clear fashion last year when the race, diversity, and inclusion protests erupted on college campuses all across America. I have been a person of color all my life, and I have had to put up with some issues that we won't get into here, but being the only vice president of color on my campus at the time, I was intrigued. Prior to going to that campus, I spent my career up to that point trying to find ways to get minority students into college or university. I had my own personal experiences as a backdrop. Plus, with my wife and I, we were raising 3 teenagers of color. I thought I had a broad range of experience to engage what was taking place before me. What I saw was a storm that was born out of unfamiliarity, a lack of empathy, and in some reported instances, pure hate. However, in the midst of the chaos of that storm, I tried to strengthen my core and tried to lead an effort to open dialogues with people of all races. The act of bringing people together was not the issue. It was the sharing of heartfelt and gut-wrenching stories amongst all of us of different races. It was not a large group, but if we wanted to strengthen our core, we would have to sit there humbly in discussion. The miraculous thing from those exercises was that every Wednesday for 1 hour, our common humanity was on display. And we were working on our core and flexibility as one. Finally, returning to my coconut tree again, its branches seemed to be dancing in the wind. The branches that were not strong simply blew off, but the ones that were stronger appeared to be dancing in the wind. I would demonstrate for you, but I am follically challenged, and not much is going on up here. However, I will invite you to close your eyes and think of those branches dancing in the wind. It seemed as if the harder the wind blew, the more joyous they looked. I have come to realize in my life that there is a stark difference between happiness and joy. The tree seemed to have joy. After the storm was over, the same coconut tree was standing with some branches gone, but it was still there. The difference that welled up in my spirit was that the happiness requires external stimuli, while joy is something on the inside that says, I'm going to be all right despite this storm. If you were ever to get around a Jamaican person when there's a tragic situation that has impacted him or her, don't be surprised if a joke comes from it. We might hear the expression, "Take bad thing, make joke." And as a most boisterous laugh will follow. One might say that's happiness. But I say to you, it is that person's ability to exude joy in the midst of a trial. They might not be happy because of the external circumstances, but there is still joy. A joy that keeps them going despite what it looks like. My friends, we need to return to those places that gave us joy and camp out there for a while. We need to focus not only on our joy, but the joy of others. If our lives are so inwardly focused, what fun is that? The coconut tree for us today is a reminder that we have to strengthen our roots. We have to go back to those things from time past that made us understand what it meant to be alive and strive for a common purpose despite the odds. However, we cannot be stuck back there because the vicissitudes of life moves in dispensations of time. We have some markers, and we all have to do is to play the tape and find where we got off track. We need to revisit that place in time where we lost our collective discipline and our tenacity. We need to get our confidence back in our common humanity. For some of us as the human race, we have to be okay with learning about history in its proper context. We have roots that spread far and wide, and they inform us even today, good, bad, and indifferent. One of my biggest fears is that we will do not become so intellectually lazy that we are no longer inquisitive about the totality of history. We need to sit and reason and listen to a point of view that is different than ours. It is okay to study biblical truths, but it's also okay to study and search for new knowledge. However, when we get that new knowledge as our foundation, we shouldn't become puffed up so that we now are woke, but in the end up with paralysis by analysis. We have to act. We have been sitting or standing in the same place too long. Share your knowledge. Seek out people that don't look like you do. Share your story. Listen to their story. I believe that the building of these three characteristics of the coconut tree was an iterative process. As we strengthen those roots, our cores become engaged. And once the core is engaged and we are flexible enough to sit and operate in uncomfortable places and settings, our joy from the inside becomes a powerful side effect. The joy will replace fear, anxiety, and stress. That joy will give us a new mindset. That joy will allow us to see things that we were destined to see. In closing, I would like to remind everyone that this is the MLK Breakfast for 2017. Many of you might know that Dr. King was a preacher, pastor, and theologian in his own right. So when I was preparing for today, I found myself creating mock conversations with him. I know that sounds a bit crazy, but sometimes you have to step outside of yourself and look at yourself and then consider what has to be done next. One of my favorite quotes of Dr. King is when he said, "The ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in the moments of comfort and convenience, but where he stands at the times of the challenge and controversy." He is speaking to us today through these words. If those of us who are firmly planted by our roots have the strength of our core and convictions, the flexibility to have our beliefs challenged, and exude a joy that this world did not give us, now is the time to step up to the plate. Engage your communities. Spend time with people who do not look like you or think like you. Mentor a child that is not your own. As Bishop Claude Richard Alexander of the Park Church said recently, how do we make our enemies not only our friends, but family? Remember, the change we want to see starts with us. In one of these mock conversations with Dr. King, I envisioned him sitting and have a conversation with me in my living room. And he said, "Gerald, the challenges society faces today are all wrapped up in the same issues I tried to address those many years ago. It highlights that we have not grown in our thoughts. We have our M's confused. We have placed mechanics over money. And instead of seeding and funding visions for our common humanity, we have created wishes, or a set of clearly articulated hopes. Nothing has changed much by way of the underlying issues, but if we are not vigilant, as the threats shifts, we will not be prepared when they reemerge. You all have been caught asleep at the wheel." Speaking of dispensations of time and the challenges each successive generation faces, you only have to look to the songs of worship. In my time, the church was the center of it all. Today, there are some churches that collect on one Sunday more than we collected all year, but they don't have the same impact that we did. We started universities. We led movements for change. We were driving the force for change. Today we have mega churches, but society still has mega issues. Once again, you all have been caught sleeping at the wheel. But coming back to those songs, in my day we would sing songs like, "The Lord will make a way somehow." That one and many others carried us over as we did the work of being America's conscience. Today, you have songs that are powerfully reflective and, more importantly, symbolize that you are in another dispensation in time. You have a young artist by the name of Travis Green. that captures this reflective sentiment beautifully in the lyrics to his song, You Made a Way. One of the verses says, you made a way. When our backs were against the wall, and it looks as if it was over, you made a way. And we are standing here only because you made a way. A second verse says, you move mountains. You cause walls to fall. With your power, perform miracles. There is nothing that is impossible. And we're standing here only because you made a way. Ponder those words. Understand the dispensation in time that we're in. Your backs might be seemingly against the wall, and fear, anxiety, and stress has crept in. Channel those emotions to focus on your roots, your core, your flexibility, and your joy. Because I fear that if you don't do that, we will come to a fork in the road 10 years from now, and we will choose the fork. You have to choose a path that will make this world a better place. Reach out to your brothers and sisters of all religions, races, creeds, and nationalities, and get up out of that rocking chair you have been sitting in. All you have been doing is a whole bunch of action and no forward movement. This is the time, and believe me when I say, it is on this generation now, and I leave you with this. If not now, when?